We're going to go to SK Klemann. SK is the Director of Sales for Closed Loop Partners. He's going to talk a little bit about some innovative funding that is available to municipalities to invest in upgrading processing facilities. SK?
All right, good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I started out leaving upstate New York. I was in a climate where it was 80 to 85 degrees, believe it or not, and walked out of that facility. For 3 days, I was in that temperature, and it was, like I said, 80, 85 degrees. I was like, this is great. Then I go outside, and there's ice and snow on all the trees and everywhere you can look. I was like, well, at least I'm getting on a plane and coming down here to rock it out with great people in Florida. So thank you so much for the weather, and I'm glad I didn't bring what I just left down here. So thank you so much. I'd like to thank Brian and Gene Jones for a great program they pulled together. Also the great speakers that were up here so far, Alyssa, Dawn, Miles, and Ryan. So it's very exciting and an honor to be here and participate with them. Great friends here. And so much thanks for all of you being here and the sponsors. Driving the circular economy never stops. Learning about the circular economy never stops. And the circular economy is constantly changing. It never stops. There's more to learn. There's more to do. There's more beholden on all of us to help support that and drive forward. Before I get into that, I'd like to just say there's some great people that are teammates that if you get a chance to talk to them, look them up. They're here. Anna Fernandez, Rusty Getter, Jay Saxton, and Andrea McCauley from Balcones Resource Recycling, and Jimmy Lawler from Sims Municipal Recycling. Great folks, so if you get a chance to talk to them, please take your time and do that. My bad. Again, that's me, Stephen Klemann. My folks really do know how to spell. Years ago, I was sitting in a boardroom, and there was too many Stevens, and the joke was they were trying to ask me questions, and everybody else was answering them, and CEO said, that's it. You're Steve. You're Stephen. You're SK. You got a problem with that? I said, no, sir. You're the CEO. So that's how that all happened years ago. But really, my parents do know how to spell. So. What I'm going to talk about today is three things. Closed Loop Partners overview, some of the great funding opportunities that we have for communities, municipalities, and private entities, and up-and-coming businesses. Localized Modular MRFs, and Localized Recycling Fund. A little bit about Closed Loop Partners. We are a New York-based investment firm comprised of venture capital, growth equity, private equity, and project finance, as well as a great innovation center spearheaded by Kate Daly. We have built an ecosystem that connects entrepreneurs, industry experts, municipalities, consumer goods companies, retailers, and financial institutions to get them into one room and collaborate. How do we drive the circular economy forward? The CEO of the company is Ron Gonen. Started this venture out quite a few years ago. Great man. If you ever get a chance to talk to him, please reach out. On the forefront of building a circular economy, we find that there are three components to it that the company is comprised to. The key business segments are an investment firm. As being an investment firm is the Center for Circular Economy, Asset Management Group, and Circular Services. We work for the Center for Circular Economy. We work to accelerate the transition to a circular economy in which materials are shared, reused, and continuously recycled. It's taking a holistic, end-to-end approach, innovating, testing, and scaling the circular solutions for the future. Our expertise spans the full cycle of a product, connecting upstream, innovation, downstream recovery infrastructure, and end markets. Kate Daly, again, as I said, guides this group Very smart folks in there working with partners to unite together to move forward. They tackle complex challenges to implement systematic change to advance the circular economy. They're bringing competitors into one room to say, hey, how do we figure this out? How do we make it better for all of you in this room, for the consumers, for the manufacturers, and the processors? We're working on projects such as Beyond the Bag, the Next Gen Cup, where you may see major box brand companies or retailers in one room as competitors, but also as friends saying, we have to figure this out. You may see major restaurant chains where they're sitting there in a room together with us saying, all right, we got to figure out the Next Gen Cup. Oops. How do you go back? Oop, my bad, sorry about that. Asset management, middle box. There's a lot of features in that. This is what I'm here to talk a lot about is folks may not understand, or you do. There are different funds that you can capitalize on and apply for funding with different aspects of your business. One fund that I'd like to talk about is the Closed Loop Ventures Group, guided by Martin Aries. We deploy early stage capital into companies developing breakthrough solutions for the circular economy. Our portfolio includes developing leading innovations in material science, robotics, agritech, sustainable consumer products, and advanced technologies that further the circular economy. One of those companies that we invested in early and supported and helped guide them through a platform, I believe a lot of you have heard about them. It's called AMP Robotics. Closed Loop was an integral part of that. I mean, Matanya and his group, they're the brains of the whole thing, but that was one of the ventures that we got into. Another group fund that I'd like to talk about is Closed Loop Growth Opportunities Fund. Carolyn Brown guides that group. We're a growth equity fund primarily focused on innovations in circular fashion, material science, and supply chain technology. So we're supporting companies to say, hey, how can we produce, let's say the fashion industry, how can we produce this cheaper with less cost? At the end of the day, how can we get less textiles going into a landfill and divert that out? Do we need to produce that much? Do we need to cut that off at the beginning and say, all right, we need to produce this much, not this much, right? Closed Loop Leadership Fund is also housed into the asset management group. Jennifer Louie guides that group, and there's multiple funds in that. For the Leadership Fund, it's a buyout private equity focused on along the value chain to build circular supply chains, whether manufacturing or processing. And I'm sorry, Jennifer Louie does not spearhead that or guide that one. That is where we've invested in, for example, Sims Municipal Recycling, Balcones. We have assets in Florida here, Fort Myers, West Palm, Sarasota. The Closed Loop Infrastructure Fund, that's where Jen Louie is involved with. So we provide below market rate loans to finance projects that build out circular economy infrastructure in the United States. This was established in roughly 2014 and funded by the world's largest retailers, corporate foundations, technology, and consumer goods companies. We fund replicable and scalable and sustainable recycling and circular economy infrastructure projects across sortation, processing, and new technologies. Where a company may come to us, a municipality or a company. A perfect example is here in the state of Florida. Emerald Coast Utility Authority needed help with remodernizing their MRF. We were there to help them out. City of Memphis with carts. You know, it's carts for recycling, not for MSW. They needed support and assistance, and hey, we need to close that gap. We want to roll out carts. We don't want to have bins or 34-gallon carts on the street. We want to have 96-gallon. We were there. We helped them with that funding. City of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. We've also helped them and numerous others. The Closed Loop Beverage Fund is also sitting in there. It's a partnership with the American Beverage Association where we seek to improve the collection of the industry's valuable plastics that you see every day, whether it's at your house, your business, or a plant you may be running. So what they're trying to capture there is more plastic to get it recycled into a processing facility. Closed Loop Circular Plastics Fund. We deploy catalytic financing into sustainable technologies, organizations, projects that advance the recovery and recycling of plastics in the U.S. and Canada. This fund is geared around initiatives where you're focused on polyethylene or polypropylene. Some of the technologies that we've sat there and supported with gap closure on funding is camera technology, where it's established right there in the MRF, where it's sitting there doing your audits with high-tech camera technology to sit there and say, hey, there's this many PET bottles going across, there's this many polypropylene bottles going across, or hey, there's this much contamination. You got a problem here at the beginning. We've also helped cities with optical sorters for those initiatives where they've applied for that funding. Circular Services is the largest privately held, that's the last box there, recycling and reuse company in North America, including major municipal and commercial contracts. They're focused on processing paper, metal, glass, plastics, organics, textiles, and electronics. There's some great folks out there in the industry that you get a chance to talk to and see if there's anything that they can support you with. Adam Viek at Balcones and Tom Outerbridge at Sims Municipal Recycling. Talk about some classy folks. You ever get a chance, ring them up. So what I'm talking about is circular economy. What many of the folks here are talking about is circular economy. Far too long have we been on a linear path where it's extract, pull it right out of the natural resources, manufacture, consume, and then dispose. It doesn't work anymore. We have to change that. That's why we're supplying and producing all these different funds to help people ignite and create a circular economy within their municipalities, within their private business. Because, folks, roughly there's over $2.6 trillion worth of consumer packaging materials are sent annually to landfills throughout the U.S. Circular economy represents $4.5 trillion of global economic value by 2030. Now, what does that mean? For some municipalities, they're like, hey, we want to do more, or a private hauler, we want to do more, but I can't afford a large-scale MRF. I called up to get a quote. It's going to cost me $6, $10, $15, $20 million. I only have 5, maybe 10,000 tons a year. So it was like, all right, yeah, that's a challenge. When you sit there and you produce a system at $10 million and you only have 10,000 tons a year, the math doesn't work. So we said, all right, we got to roll up our sleeves and we got to try and help out these folks that don't have access. Now, there's nothing against a regional MRF. There's nothing against a large-scale MRF. These are for the folks that say, we can't get it 3 hours to this facility. The transfer and trucking is just going to kill us. We have our own facility, we need to upgrade it, and we need to meet up with the challenges from the industry where they're demanding more recycled content in the products they're producing. So we have this pretty cool little model. It's called a Localized Modular MRF that we're helping private haulers and municipalities with, where it's anywhere from 5,000 to 12,000 tons per year unit capacity. You can put it into 10 to 20,000 square feet. It'll cost you $2.5 to roughly $4 million. Depends on the technology you want. And then a quicker time to market. Right now, the back order on some of these larger scale MRFs, and you don't have the volume for it, it just doesn't work. With that, I'd like to close with the Local Recycling Fund. It's a partnership with PepsiCo, where there's $35 million in a fund. It's for communities that have not recycled, that stopped the recycling, and need to produce a recycling outlet for their communities where they're sitting there saying, hey, we want to operate our own small facility, or we already have it, but we want to upgrade it. That funding is there. How do you apply for that? You simply go to our website, click on our funds, and you'll see the whole list there. It's that simple, where you just pick on the fund that you're looking for. Each of them are complementary to the information I've just given you, so that it's really an easy dialect. We provide debt funding to municipalities or private companies to help recover and close the gap in the United States where you don't have access. That's what we're there for. I'd like to thank you so much. I'd like to thank Brian and the panel that have spoke today. It's a high-level view. We had to go through it quick. We didn't have a lot of time. But again, thank you so much, and keep driving forward with the circular economy initiatives that all of you in this room are doing. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, SK. That was a terrific look at an innovative opportunity to get low-cost financing, pardon me, for municipalities to fill the gap and improve their recycling and processing infrastructures. All right, question and answer time. This is the opportunity that you all get to drill down a little bit deeper, ask a question that may be more specific to your needs. We've got one up front.
What do you guys think about the packaging that Amazon has where they put thermocol between two paper bags to replace plastic? Thermocol, as you know, is not a great recycling product. And if, you're pretty much going back in time by adding unrecyclable stuff in recyclable content.
I'm not sure I got it. Are you asking about plastic components on paper products?
Amazon has created a bag which has a plastic, a mailer bag, like a mailer paper bag,
right,
which has thermocol in the middle of two paper. And that is, as bad as it gets in terms of recyclability, because you added thermocol, which is not a paper product, into a paper product.
Right,
and
so
and they, of course, put recyclable on the bag, so it doesn't go in trash, it goes into...
Okay.
Yes,
I
Don,
think the question is about the all-paper padded mailers that are replacing the paper and bubble wrap combinations. If you know, there's craft paper on the outside, on the inside. The cushioning is a water-soluble cellulose material, and those have been getting a lot more use through e-commerce retailers. Dawn?
I think Miles and I can both kind of tag team this. And I'm not an expert. What I'm seeing at my house, the ones that are paper inside and out, we can recycle because they're pretty straight paperboard. We're certainly getting more of a plastic type bag, which we cannot take at our MRFs at this point. They are not recyclable in our machinery. And I haven't seen the combo one where it's paper and bubble wrap, so I'm going to turn that over to Miles and see what he says if the mills want those. But clearly, I'm not getting as many OCC boxes at home from Amazon, so they're cutting down on the shipping costs. But the ones that are paper in and out are okay for us.
Yeah, I agree with Don. The ones that are paper in and out are usually okay. And they usually, in a MRF, and Don can answer this as well, those things usually end up either in the OCC bale or the mixed paper bale. And most mills who take mixed paper find those acceptable. The ones that are combination, paper on the outside, bubble wrap on the inside, are a little more problematic for most mills. In spite of all the science and the technology, nobody's yet figured out how to make this into this. Okay, so once that happens, they can certainly, go to a paper mill, but I don't think that's going to happen in our lifetimes. I'd like to follow up on Don's point about Amazon reducing packaging. One of the things that we saw last year, when we see the numbers come out for 2022, we're going to see that the tons of recyclable is probably going to go down because the paper industry was in a period of contraction during the second half of last year. A lot of mills shut down, et cetera. Some of that's temporary because of the economy. Some of that's permanent too, because, like, for instance, I know this doesn't mean a lot to all of you or some of you, but the strength of a box and the thickness of the box is measured in ECT, edge crush strength. And you will see that on the bottom of the box there's a seal. The Amazon boxes mostly used to say 36, 32, et cetera. They're down in the 20s now. They're down to 26 ECT. So optically in a MRF, you see as many boxes sometimes as you did a year or so ago. But when you take those tens of billions of boxes or hundreds of billions of boxes and add them all together, and the industry has been going to weighting, as the plastic industry has done for years, that has a big impact on the tons. That's permanent. That doesn't come back with the economy. Nobody's going back. If they went from a 32 ECT to a 26 ECT, a thinner box basically, nobody's going back in 2 years and saying, hey, give us more paper in your box.
Great, thanks. Bill, do you have a question?
Ryan, your corrugated box supply seemed to focus on offshore exports using containers. Did you consider Canada and Mexico cross-border imports, exports of corrugated boxes at all?
Yeah, so all of the imports and exports that came into the country were accounted for from all countries, not just by sea container at ports.
Okay. Thanks. Another question in the back.
Hi, Miles.
Hey, Michael.
Question I have revolves around the education aspect, because I think every recycling conference I've ever been to talks about education and, you know, educating the people at the residential side, but it never seems to really get all that much better from my perspective. So, I mean, is it realistic to think that the inbound stream to the MRFs will improve, or is it just the expectation to not let it get worse than what it currently is? Because I've been at this for a long time too, and it seems like it never really improves all that much. So I'm just curious from your perspective, but anybody else on the panel, if we really think it can improve, and will it?
Hello, thank you for your question. I think the goal is definitely to hope that it improves, and that's why we have a recycling education and outreach grant that I mentioned. It's promoting all types of tools in different communities, because not everything is going to work in every community. So I hope that that's everyone's hope.
Thanks for the question. I sometimes share your angst. I'll let you know, we just did a pilot in Collier County, Florida with the Recycling Partnership, and it involved some door-to-door, you know, knocking on doors. I think they got to 1,700 multifamily and several thousand single family, and they had a control group, et cetera. We saw some reduction in contamination, but it was fairly small percentage, and that was very high outlay of expense to go door to door. So none of us in this room who work on education, you know, a lot are giving up on it. We're going to continue to try to be creative and get to people where they're at, in their languages and everything else, with simplified messaging. I think back to basics, simplified messaging is key. But we also have to look at enforcement. And I know there are some areas in Florida where municipalities are starting to do some code enforcement. And I think we have to be realistic about potentially taking away recycling bins or carts from households who continue to contaminate and are really using it as an extra garbage can. So that's not necessarily a WM approach, that's a Don McCormick approach, but we do support enforcement, and we try to work with our partner municipalities to talk about that, because I think in the end, without a little bit of an enforcement program, we're not going to get to where we want to be.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, we know that education is a huge element of getting more recyclable materials in the recycling stream and less contamination. We know that access is not the issue. We did research in 2021-22 that identified 93% of U.S. consumers have access to a community recycling program that accepts paper and paper-based packaging. The education piece is what's going to make that grow and deliver more materials into the stream. Dawn mentioned the recycling partnership. They make available on their website open source educational materials that municipalities can download, personalize, and use in their own education programs. I think that's a great way to take advantage of effective practices, see how they adapt within the culture in the local community, and work to continue educating consumers.
Brian, I have
Another
a little
question?
to add to that.
Sure.
So to back up the standpoint Dawn has, I'm not going to name any cities or municipalities, but to answer your question or to help support what's going on, I'm talking and visiting with folks throughout the country, and there is a lot of talk that I've heard in the last 2 years of we're not there yet, it's darn close, but we're getting ready to start pull the cans from the bad users, because the cost of paying for contamination versus paying for processing the recyclables is getting out of hand. So the municipality heads are starting to sit there and look at that, whether it's in Florida or in another state. I'm just not going to pinpoint it, but I'm having numerous conversations where that's their guidance. They're getting ready to do that. So.
And I'd just like to add too, this is such a complicated issue. I've just finished a large research paper for a big NGO, and there was a big part of that was about contamination. And I have contamination rates from, I'm not sure what the number is, 30, 40, 50 cities across the country. Some of the things is the education stuff is good, we got to continue to do it, but it doesn't necessarily stick. One of my, I won't say issues or problems or anything like that, but one of the things is you see all this data about we went into the city and we put these tags on the carts and we did this education program and we went into the schools and whatever, and contamination rates dropped by, I'm making a number up, 35%. You never see the same data from a year later, okay, did it stick? And then, so that's one thing. Number two is there's so many brands that slap the RIC code or recycling code on things that are not this gentleman's first question about the padded mailer, okay? And they just slap the recycling, so the consumer is confused, so that's the other thing. The third thing is there are some cities that are now doing, to Stephen's, I'm sorry. You're only Stephen to your mother. Okay, to SK's point, there are some cities that are rolling out programs or reinvigorating their single stream programs with opt-in that says, okay, recycling is free. We know it's not free, but we're not going to charge you, the consumer, the resident, for recycling, but you have to request a bin to get it. I think Cleveland is doing this now. I'm not sure. They stopped the program and then they're starting it again, and I think it's going to be an opt-in program. So hopefully, Michael, those people who opt in are going to be the people who care and who are serious and who are going to be a little more careful about what they put in.
Okay, thank you. Question?
Yeah, I got one more here. Hi, good morning, guys. Mike Jones with RRT. Don, for the 30 MRFs, you guys are looking to have upgrades by 2025. How does Waste Management make the decisions on which of their many MRFs across the country to do the upgrades at? What's generally the decision process?
Brent Bell is our Vice President of Recycling in Houston, and I know that they are looking at, obviously they look at the contracts we have for those MRFs, how many have guaranteed volumes and how far out, which ones obviously need the upgrades in terms of their kind of end of life, and we have long-term contracts there. But they're certainly looking at it from a business perspective of where do we invest our capital? And we do that for everything. Where do we put our new trucks? Where do we put our new MRFs? Where do we put, our upgraded MRFs? But I'm sure they're looking at capacity issues, future growth issues in the marketplace, and where we, have contracts that we have to meet the needs of our customers. So kind of a multi-pronged approach, but that's being done in Houston. We're just really pleased that they made that commitment to South Florida. Again, $70 million. And I know there's folks in the room I've been having conversations with that Orlando and Orange County are looking at a MRF. So there's lots of opportunity for growth markets, and Florida is a big part of that. But we also, look to what our customer needs are and what we anticipate our contracts will require.
Terrific, thank you. I think we have time for one more in the back.
This question is for Dawn. Dawn, I was wondering, when you was doing all your numbers, with your curbside recycling, what percentage was actual recyclables versus the trash? The contamination rates, because we know people don't want to behave.
So, I can speak mostly to contamination rates in Florida, but I mean, the corporate numbers are that we've actually seen some pretty decent reductions around the country, and they're getting down in the 20% range, maybe even 19% was the last graph I saw. In Florida, we're still north of 25%. We have some areas in unfortunately South Florida, because I work down in Palm Beach County and that's where I'm based. Broward and Miami-Dade County, the material we get is still really high, 35%, sometimes 40% coming into Rooter facility. One of the reasons we did make a commitment to Rooter is we know that the new technology is going to help us to handle that contamination a little bit better. But that's our corporate number is about 19%, but I would say we're not that good in Florida.
Thank you. Friends, we're at time. After this session, we'll move to a break. There are refreshments in the exhibit hall over in Ballroom C, which is to your left as you exit the room. Before we leave, please join me in thanking our panelists, Alyssa, Dawn, Miles, SK, and Ryan. I think everyone said they can stick around for a couple of minutes. If you have a question that you did not get a chance to ask them, please come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.